Hey everybody, it's Eric. I'm making a game. That game is called The Godkiller. That's a puzzle solving adventure game. 3D top down view. Very detailed levels. You're shown as a very small character inside of it. There's a lot of joy in maneuvering through 3 dimensions to solve puzzles, and everything is handcrafted. Challenges for you to solve. A lot of attention paid to these levels and making them fun puzzles. Alright, so I'm going to demo recent progress. That's what I like to do at the beginning of each stream. I return to a level I created a long while back. It's not actually a level, it's a scene that will go inside of another level, but that's sort of splitting hairs. And this is a pure story scene. It's not really something that you're trying to play through. It's therefore advancing the story forward. When M dies, M is the main character. When she dies for the very first time in the game, she goes to this weird place called the Death Box, and a creature meets her there and sings a song to her. And it's about resurrecting her in a violent way, in a sadistic way. She'll be chopped to pieces and reassembled, and then she'll be born again. And aside from just sort of like the shock value of it, and there's a lot of story reasons why this death event has to be gruesome and terrible, because it justifies M's decision to become a pacifist and not push anyone, not hurt anyone, not do anything that would ever hurt anyone. She's horrified by this place. Okay, so that's the setup for it. I'm just going to hit play, and you're going to hear a song, and I'll be quiet while it plays. The thing that's going to be missing in this is that there'll be some lips on the screen that are intended to move while the character is singing. Right now they'll be static.
Oh, little nothing, you have strayed. Oh, little nothing, you are afraid that all your pieces fell apart, they fell below. A little nothing, where did they go? We see you here, your sad little face. Come to cry, come to beg for our grace. Can we put you back together? Yes, we can. Can we put you back together? Yes, we can. Can we put you back together? Yes, we can. Will we put you back together? That's the plan. Cause we got the knife to fix you, to slice you, to bite you, to grind you, unwind you. Because we got the knife to find you, to hurt you, revert you, revise you, comprise you. We got to steal you, reveal you, defeat you, complete you, devour you, empower you. Because we got the knife to life. One way back to life, just one way back to life. It's what I need, the knife. We got the knives. Think hard, little child, before you go someplace wild.
Okay. So the next thing for me to do in this stream is get the animated mouth movements synced up with the song. A while back I did create what I call a lips file. Which has all the timing for the mouth movements. I created it in a different tool that is no longer working. I made a replacement tool for it, but I did already spend some time authoring this file. It seems to me I ought to check and see if that other file that I authored, if I import it in and play it, if it will sync up correctly. If not, I might have to redo the file. Okay, so let's see. See if I've got anything that I already wrote in my code for the song manager to load in blips files. I don't think I did that. I think I only made that for speech. Lyrics, fading, beats, key change, okay. Yeah, I'm just loading in these two files, okay. I'm struggling a little bit because some of the code that I've already written for speech would handle this. I keep going back and forth if I want to use speech to handle it, which already has this lips file thing and everything. It's got all the parsing for it. Or if I want to use the song manager but add something to the song manager that manages the lips. I have to think about that a little bit. Let's see. So one problem is I have to add this to my requirements. Pause and unpause support. So I think currently if audio was playing for a character and I leave and then I come back, it would just lose that line. See, that's not true. That's not true necessarily. Yeah, I probably didn't write anything to pause and unpause specific vocals. Also, I think the code that I wrote to handle speech dialogue is the audio for it, playing the audio along with it, might not be working because I haven't used it in so long, and other things changed underneath it, like the locations of files and stuff like that. So let me just think about this method. One issue with it is support for songs that have vocals but multiple characters. So I should expand this a little bit. Although this current song that has vocals only has one singer, there's other songs that'll go in the game that have more than one vocalist, more than one character. So I'm expanding my requirements to cover that too, because if I just get something thrown together that works for this one scene, I'll have more work to do later for the other songs. So I kind of like this idea that I would use the lips file for a vocal to handle the vocals and the animation within a song. I think that's the way I'm going to do it. I see it working for everything above. I just have to keep making some updates to it. And I'll be solving some other problems at the same time by getting this to work with the speech say command and everything I got there. Do have to think about how the WAV files are going to be loaded in. So I can play here. Let's write this into handle lips animation with speech say. Play a song with Song Manager. So I don't need to have this mechanism play a big giant 2.5 minute clip. You can just have the Song Manager handle that. And that will also mean that whatever the player's music volume settings are at, the song will play at that same volume. That seems fine. Then I'll use a normal animation timeline for showing the subtitles instead of using the speech say, because speech say is only geared to show it's only geared to show one subtitle line at a time. And I don't want to make some complicated way that would show a whole bunch of them. I also don't want to have multiple lines that are called with speech say all in conjunction with lips timing in all of them, because the chance of it getting out of sync at some point due to some variables just a little bit out of my control is it goes up each time that I add one more call to speech say in the controlling code. Okay, so thinking about this a little more, what are my next steps? Let's find the lips file that corresponded to the original timing of the song. I know I've got it someplace in here. It might even be here. Yeah, this is it. So what does this file look like? Well, it's not done. That's one thing. It doesn't have the "we got the knives," the chorus essentially. But let's use it as a starting point to make sure everything works. I remember there were some timing bugs too, so I may have to work on those today a little bit. Let's copy this. Oh, time to create a new folder. Speech. I've been very inconsistent about using speech or dialogue let's call it speech. Now, do I want to have everything in one folder? I don't think so. I think I want folders that go by scene name. So let's call this Death Box. Okay, the naming convention we used before was scene name, character name, first 3 words of the line. But since I'm going to use this new folder organization, let's just do character name, first 3 letters. All right, so am I going to need to put this in the streaming assets? Feels like I'll have better luck with this whole thing if I put it in streaming assets. If I do put it in streaming assets, then oh, God. The hard part of this is not getting it to work. That's not it. The hard part is my head thinking about the future and thinking about all the actions I have to take for the workflow and authoring. Put it there. That means it needs asynchronous loading. If I put it in some place besides streaming assets, it needs asynchronous loading. Okay, just thinking about my different options here. So all these decisions to make, man. Where to put speech and speech WAV and lips files. Okay, number 1. Okay, so there's 2 cases. Authoring and authoring time. Where am I putting them? Okay. At playtime, where do they go? So authoring, let's say for the first option, let's say we put them in GK streaming assets. playtime. Yeah, streaming assets. That's option number 1. Number 2, authoring. By the way, this would require face tool in GK project. Okay, authoring. Face tool. Play. Requires a script to run to copy files over. Like a batch script or, you know, command line script. Okay. Number 3. Authoring. This is a fun one. MySQL. I've got a service. It can upload stuff to it. Okay. Play. Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. The pattern is that whatever I choose for authoring, there's kind of a separate decision for where it's going to play from. And I think that location where it plays from should not be influenced by the authoring, because wherever I choose to put it for authoring, there's going to be some kind of script or something that ferries across the data to where it needs to go. So with that in mind, let me simplify this whole thing and just first think, where is the best place for it to be at playtime? So let's just get rid of the authoring options for now. Because I feel that's just a second decision to make that shouldn't be influenced by the first very much. Okay. Do assets, project, audio, speech. Game object with audio clips with audio clip array. Okay, so plus no fiddling, adding bytes to end. Can load synchronously. Although that's arguably that's a bad thing to load synchronously. Let's see. Simpler state machine. Avoid running state machine code for loading. Let's see, what else? That's about it, really. Those are the advantages. Minus, oh my god, that's the biggest fucking stinging insect. Is that the murder hornet we've heard so much about? Didn't like it. Yeah, I'm just noticing all kinds of insects today, and it's reminding me that I've got to go to war with them. It's time to battle the spring. That means no food residue out any place in my house because the ants find it. And it means I got to put into effect some poison and traps and stuff for the ants and the stinging insects. Yeah. They're scoping out where they're going to live this year, and I don't want to be near my house. All right. Okay, the bad thing about it. Okay. So, WAV files loading synchronously at scene load means frame drop, performance issues. Or if loading them when on demand for speaking, unreliable start time, and frame drop. So I already feel like this is a bad idea because of these two things. Now, if it was just ellipse files, there's just tiny 100 to 1,000 byte files. The synchronous load in them is probably not going to be a big deal. Although, who knows with like console platforms, maybe there's a warm-up time or something like that. Okay. So this it's the flip of number one, async loading. Means better performance, lack of frame drop, minus state machine complexity. And that's really a very small thing. That's just a very minor state tracking thing. There is a sort of a thing like you really hope all the audio is loaded by the time the player is moving around at the beginning of the level. Because if it's not, then as long as it's loaded like in the first second. But if it's not, then if there's something the character needs to say and it's not done loading yet, then you're still waiting and you can't say it. It's okay though, because there's some code. There's some code already that says, are things still loading? If they are, we're going to wait. We're going to wait for them to load before we initiate any speech or anything. Okay. So the level controller already has that logic in it. So this is should be fine. Level controller has code for it. Okay. And I'm fiddling with adding bytes to the end. That's not that big a deal. Okay. Okay, so if I do this, then it has to be some kind of tool that generates the audio clip array inside of the scene automatically. Write tool that generates audio clip array automatically. I don't know if there's any performance advantages between having the audio clips be scene reference, so therefore they're in the normal implicit loading. I'll say at least it totally removes the idea that you won't be ready to play those audio files when the level starts. So that's a plus. Audio files guaranteed to be loaded when scene finishes loading. No state machine support needed. Okay, and I'll be honest, although I have these level controllers that will not start up until all the audio has loaded, the trouble with that is, suppose there is maybe one scene that has quite a bit of audio and it's on a slow platform for loading in the audio, then that means that maybe it will take a while for it to be possible for the level controller to start. So if there's something like, we want the level controller to play some audio very close to the beginning of when the player arrives in the level, well, the level controller won't start until all the audio for the scene is loaded. So because we've delayed this a little bit, it's possible we get into trouble. But you know what? There is a plus to this, though. This other way of like kind of late loading the speech. Plus allows scenes to load quicker. So this is interesting. Either this advantage allows scenes to load quicker, or this advantage only comes into play if there's a substantial amount of time spent loading the audio, like something measured in seconds instead of milliseconds. It also occurs to me that if it becomes a problem on any given level that the level controller needs all the audio to be loaded, I can do some things that make the state machine a little more complex. I can let the level controller run. Basically, I don't think it'll come up, but if it does, it's probably the sort of thing where there's such an advantage to letting the player start faster on the level instead of waiting for the audio to load that it's worth putting some gates in the level or designing the level a certain way so that the speech audio can be delayed. It's kind of like setting up a streaming system in a way that your level will not have to entirely load all at once before you can begin playing in it. So I'm liking number 2 better. I also have to put a minus on, this is a personal bias, but I don't trust it's hard to express using game objects this way. It feels brittle. It feels like it's gonna break. It's hard for me to explain why. It just getting certain instincts after having things break after updates to Unity. I'm gonna go with number 2. Okay, so that settles this part. Playback. Okay, let me detail out the solution here a little further. So I think I've got a bunch of stuff here already that also applies to speech. So I've got this idea that we might load a sound effect just for the current scene, and after you get done with that scene, it'll unload. That code's already written in here. So these defaults, they persist throughout the entire game. They're always loaded in. They're always ready to be played. And then I've got these calls to load melodic, load non-melodic. I mean, it's mainly there's two things that are wrong and don't apply. Just the name of the class, sound effect manager, and the locations that it's going to load from. I'm trying to find where I've got the location specified. Load WAVs, okay. Okay, it's going to be in loadable WAV. I've got a bucketing problem here. Some classes, they belong in the boot directory because they're things that are persistent all the time and they boot up at the start. So that's where sound effect manager and song manager is. Some things belong in audio because they're part of audio. Some things belong in editor audio because they're editor only audio stuff. That I'm okay with. And then finally some things belong in dialogue because they're part of character dialogue. So there's some overlap in all of them. And the one I'm looking for, loadable WAV, is that a built-in? Yeah, it's a built-in class. Okay, it's got the sound effect asset path. Okay. So I think I really do want it to be part of this, but I'll have to generalize this if I do it. Let me take a look at speech loader. This stuff with persistent audio is kind of a pain. So there's a directory that you can get from the Unity environment where you say, give me the persistent data path. It's something like that. And the good thing about it is that path can be used to write files to, and it can be shared between different projects. And the bad thing about it is it's going to work in the editor. It's not necessarily going to work very well for the build. You have to do something else to get the files that you want to include in the build. So this feels like something that's going to eventually be deleted. Okay, I'll be right back. to work, back to work, back to work. Boom, 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 boom. Alright. So, let me think about this further. There's a fair amount of refactoring here. Let's see, let's call this settled. Okay, so number one solution. I could almost just call it, okay, I've got song manager. Song manager is kind of different. What is the name that is correct for this? Maybe I should leave sound effect manager right where it is. And whatever needs to be reused from it, I'll refactor to common classes. Because there is quite a bit inside of it that is specific to sound effects and doesn't really go along with speech. So let's say speech manager is a new thing. Sound effect manager. Loadable WAV. Move to separate class. Okay, there is one thing about the loadable WAV. Hold on, let me look at that. The one thing that I know almost for certain is whatever's in speech loader I don't care about. I just don't want to use it. It's kind of old and redundant. Okay, sound effect manager. There's loadable WAV. What does it get past? It gets past path, name, audio clips, audio clip I. These are references that get loaded back in. Okay. Okay, and the load tracker. What is the load tracker? Yeah, it's another thing that's specific to sound effects. Like there's stuff in here, normalize the sound effects, bind them to yeah, okay. So while there is a lot of common functionality here that should be used for speech, it's not a good module to just tack on a little bit to do speech. That way lies spaghetti code. Madness. Okay, so we'd say loadable WAV, move to separate class, generalize to work with speech or sound effects. What was the other thing it had? Sound effect. Manager, load tracker. iLoad tracker. Passed to loadable WAV instead of load tracker. So speech and sound effects can have their own load tracker. Okay. So I kind of like this because it's repeating the same pattern that I use for sound effects. So right now I have a bootable sound effect manager that's responsible for loading all of the well, just what I wrote up here. Speech manager, sound effect manager. They're in charge of loading things, okay? Then you have also sound effects and speech, which are in charge of using the effects inside of the game. So I can follow that same pattern. I can have speech manager just be responsible for loading, and speech, which is already present, be responsible for playing things back and launching animations and stuff like that, subtitles, all that. Cool. So that's good. I'm tempted to just put this all into settled instead of considering it as among more than one solution. Okay, what else is kind of missing here? Sound effect manager does a binding thing with sound effects. I don't need that with speech manager. But let's think about the speech manager APIs. Speech manager. What does speech want? What does speech want? Speech already has some code in it that is hoping to get a certain thing. Speech events. So if I do a say, okay, so I already got some state machine stuff here. Oh, we're still loading stuff for speech. Okay, so that might change to speech manager, which I think is kind of a replacement for speech loader. Okay, so I create the new speech event. I call speech loader and say, for this character in line, do you have the clip? Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. Man, there's a lot here already. It might be it's more like I'm renaming speech loader and just changing some paths and stuff. And okay, so speech loader. Yeah, I could get rid of the persistent audio stuff. I could make this a bootable. Get rid of anything related to asset bundles. Yeah, get rid of persistent audio. Oh yeah, I got the stuff in here for getting the hand animations, if there's a hand file that exists. I'll definitely have to circle back to that. Okay, then there's get lips animation. I mean, this isn't horrible. This is good when I write stuff like this. Okay. So I think the main thing is instead of relying on the persistent file path stuff, or my more recent solution for similar types of code, streaming asset path, I want to use addressables and have some callbacks. So the stuff where it says get the lips animation, it's going to return a file path and then lips file util load. That's probably doing file system calls instead of resource loading. Okay, there's one other thing that I don't understand very well, which is these asset bundles. So right now I have like a ton of assets. Well, maybe not a ton. I've got a significant amount of assets, and by default asset bundle is none. Is that inefficient in some way? Hold on, let's figure this part out. Let's also close you, and let's see. Unity, when to use asset bundles. Yeah, this one. Unfortunately, it was asked in 2010. Is there any reason? Are they like kind of like an old sort of deprecated way of doing things? This is so old. If I could get something within the last 3 years, that would be better. Okay, I don't need them. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm just using addressables. I don't need the separation of deployment, which is what what you would use asset bundles for. Yeah, got it. Cool, that simplifies things. Okay, so we just use addressables, which have been working perfectly fine for me. And what I was kind of worried about for just a brief moment there was that maybe all the assets are put into some kind of default bundle, and if I'm going to have a whole bunch of assets that really only apply to the levels that they're inside of, that loading one of the assets by the addressable system might load in some giant default monolithic asset bundle. I don't see any evidence of that. So asset bundles will not be anything I need to use. Okay, settled. Not using asset bundles. Okay, I think Speech Manager becomes the home for things to be copied over from Speech Loader that are still applicable. The basic interface that's wanted. It should probably be what Speech is currently calling. So we've got get clip character line. Let's see, what else do we have? No, not you. You. Is loading. That might be it. I kind of hope it is. Yeah, okay. So then let me look at speech clip. I think it's going to be good. Okay, that's cool. We've got our hand animation gesture file, and then we've got the lips animation that goes with it. Okay, cool. Who's calling that? Speech explicit update. Nice. All right. So I think all the code is here. It just needs to be glued together and refactored in a cleaner way that's going to work for the deployments that this thing is going to make. So I'm using verbs that really apply to web, which is my main day job thing. For the builds that are made, player builds and the places they go to, aka deployments, I need the locations of the files to make a little more sense than they do. Right now, my code is assuming that there's this local directory that's not part of the installation that is somehow going to have all the files needed in it. Okay. So this is pretty good. Speech manager is going to be bootable. And let's take a look at the pattern for sound effect manager to see what gets reused from there. Yeah, it occurs to me too. It's just fine for me to reuse loadable WAV inside of speech manager and have it be tailored to the needs of loading speech WAVs instead of having a general purpose thing, because this is all very specific to sound effects, and including like the idea that there'd be multiple audio clips that get loaded with each request. So yeah, I think I would feel better about this code continuing to be inlined in the class, not generalized. Okay, on scene unload. Just unload all the clips. Okay. And then got this load defaults, which is something that would only apply okay. So there's going to be a boot. Boot will do pretty much nothing. Okay. Okay, this I kind of like. Because what I can do is just do a directory list, and any files that I find in the directory, I can just start loading them. And then when while I do that, I build up an index to each file that gets loaded. Okay, they're all going to start loading asynchronously. Just say, okay, whatever files are in that directory, I'm just going to load them. Just going to load them all. And as they come in, I'll store them in a dictionary, which provides a kind of a lookup that can be performed pretty quickly when you pass in character and line here. Yeah, I'm starting to like it. I'm starting to like it. So I was like pretty narrowly focused on, okay, how are we going to animate them all? But I don't want to be in this mode where I pick like one little task and then I get it done. Then I have to come back and sort of revise things and redo things to fit other use cases that are just coming up just right around the corner. Just right around the corner. Like it's not going to be any time at all to have that. Have the next use case pop up. Okay, so load speech clips for scene. Does directory search. Can I get this though? I can. I can do a file system thing. This might be a little tricky, but there's ways to do it. Does directory search on, okay, for all lips, hands, WAV for a scene. I even say for active scene. Okay, and this is also good because I don't have to write any level controller code that says go load the specific speech clips that we're going to need. Never have to do that. They're just, if they're in that directory, they will get loaded. I will have to at some point make sure that if there's some that aren't being used that they get deleted. So that's a thing to be on the lookout for. Okay. Starts loading. Okay, that's how that one works. As they load, they are added to index. Looks up resources by index. Okay. To return speech clip. That will also later on give me an ability to localize. Which I like. I don't have to do it in this first release, but this is where I would do the localization. The speech clip would get returned and it would have I don't know, some localized text. Okay, so that feels pretty good. Don't need to do this. Yeah, this is making me happy. Okay, then level controller. Is it level controller? No, don't do the level controller. Hey, DZ. What's going on? I was worried, you know, like you having to stay up too late to see my stream, so here a little bit earlier for you today. Yeah, today I'm just getting deep into my speech audio classes, and I'm trying to, I was under the illusion that I was done with them, and then I realized I looked at a few things in there. They've got some old decisions that I made in them from a year or earlier that weren't very good. So I got to revise them a bit. But I'm happy with the new design I'm coming up with. It should be very futurific, very future-proof. Yeah, I'm trying not to rework everything, but when there's something that I'll keep on having to reuse that module again and again to do things with, and I'll have a bunch of other features that have to be added to it later and stuff like that. And it's like, I better get it right the first time. I better get the bones right. A much more naive version of myself wrote this code earlier, about a year ago, or Unity naive at least. So now I feel a little bit better shape to make design decisions here. Okay, so let's see. Level controller calls, speech manager, load speech clips for active scene. Let's say base class. So it'll just be something that happens automatically. Level controller loads in the speech clips for the active scene. It kind of makes sense because if there is no level controller, there's no dialogue in the scene, so therefore there's no speech clip loading that would be needed. Okay, so I think I got playback figured out. Let me just think a tiny bit about authoring. Authoring. Lips. Wow. The lips files contain instructions for animating mouth movements. Okay, so the requirements for that. I'm trying to set things up so that in the future I'll be able to hire people to produce the lips files for me, and they don't have to have a full Unity setup or anything like that. Which points to me using the service. So let's say this is settled. Okay, I won't say it's settled. I'll say it's part of the first solution. Okay. GK service handles retrieving lines that need lips authoring. Pretty sure I want to do it that way. So that means the existing web service I've got that goes against a MySQL database would handle this workflow where whoever is working on editing the lips animation with the face tool, they would basically log on to this service. They would get, what would they get from it? I think it's okay for them to download the WAV files from it too. Alright, I don't want to overthink this part because I just need to make sure it's compatible with the first thing that I did. Okay. Inside GK at edit time, I can download all lips files from GK service and write them to directories to assets project. Man. Let's say hands files too, maybe. Well, let's leave that for now. Okay. So that can go in there. That seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, I've done something similar to that already. So that seems fine. And this is all to get back to this part up here. But that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Well, let's start. Since I'm about ready to make all the sweeping changes, okay, so go to boot. I think even let's take sound effect manager, and I'll even copy and paste the whole thing just because it's got a lot of patterns in it that I can reuse. Okay, speech manager. So asynchronously begin loading all WAV lips hands for that match the current scene. After is loading returns false. These will be available by calling get speech clip. Once scene unloads, all loaded assets will be free. So you can't use this for plain speech that spans levels, but a one-off load of sound effect. The sound effect manager could accomplish that. All right. That is how this thing gets used. Don't need this. To do populate index, maybe. Okay, loadable WAV. It's only going to be one audio clip. I don't even know if it'll work this way. No, this should be bam, like that. Okay, cool. And what was the... Oh, because it's a ref, whoever uses it will get the audio clip eventually put back into here. Okay. So I don't know if anything actually has to be done here. Do anything here? I think it mattered when I was normalizing. Yeah, it was. I remember. I couldn't do this operation until everything had completed, because some of the data I was generating would have spanned multiple multiple resources that we're waiting to load. Okay, so let's just simplify this. Make it just a basic reference counter. Yeah. Don't need the CNN load actions. To do an index of speech clips. Don't need any of this. Don't need this. Don't need this. Let's see, to do should also load in, no, don't need that, load by async, okay. This is just an audio clip. Does it matter if I allocate this to start? How strange. So it was okay for me to declare an array of audio clips, but it was not okay for me to... Oh, I know why. Because when you have an array, it doesn't actually call the constructor on each one of the elements of the array. It only creates like an object pointer reference, something like that. Okay, got it. Although I feel this is wrong. I don't trust this very well. Let's see. So if I pass a ref into here, this could just be out. Don't need this. Yeah, this doesn't quite work though. Because before, when I had an array, it was sort of like a container that to put the reference in that would be set later. So let's see how to clean this up a little bit. The truth is we don't have the audio clip to start. We won't get it until it finishes loading. But we just want some kind of container for it to be in. And before, when there was an array, that was the container. But this whole thing is like a container. So we could do something like maybe public. And this doesn't have to be set right away. Yeah, okay. And then this is just, it's reducing to like a nothing method. Because like I was thinking, I'll change this to loadable WAV, and then I'll just be returning the new loadable WAV. But whoever called this in the first place could simply make the new loadable WAV. So let's just leave that out. And this, at least, I'm pretty sure it's going to do the job of loading the audio clip. Okay, don't need this. Don't need this. Or this. Nothing for this. For this, I think. Stop it. Okay, don't need that. Don't need any of this. This remains true. Okay, this, don't need it. Okay, so that's not a bad little framework. All right. I'll be right back. All right, so now a little bit of data structure design makes sense. So speech ID can always be generated from the active scene name, character, and line. Speech loader. Speech file path. That's my utility class to figure this stuff out. So here you just say, you want the speech ID. You can just get that from here. Okay, all this stuff is going to be just right in here. Feels like I should reuse this. Also, I'm liking the idea of keeping all of the speech files just in one directory. I was going to do subdirectories per scene, but since the name of everything is going to be prefixed with the scene name, it'll be easy enough to find whatever I'm interested in. They'll just sort that way. Although, now that I said that out loud, I'm having second thoughts. let's say I go to speech here. Is there some way to like show this in a list view? Yeah, I might take that back. Well, no, I suppose I'll just go into the regular Finder and sort through them that way. That's all I have to do. Okay. So if that's true, then let's just move this up one to speech, and then there's a bunch of code I won't have to redo. Fried law. Hey, what's going on? Okay. Okay, so if I do that, then I think my data structure is just a dictionary. String, speech ID, and speech clip. I feel like this should just all get initialized in one place. I don't like to have multiple locations. So let's do speech clips equals new dictionary string speech clips, and load tracker equals new load tracker, and we'll return true. Getting the clip is pretty simple. String speech ID. What was the class? Speech file path. Okay. Get speech ID, character name, and line. Okay. And then we say could also do return. I think that'll do it. Let's throw an assertion in here for the case where we're still loading when getClip is being called. because that would indicate the caller is made an error. Load tracker. It's loading. Okay. This is starting to look okay. String. Let's see how to do this. So I want to get just a list of let's get the active scene name first. String active scene name equals scene manager. Active scene and the name of that scene, and then we'll say let's write this: start loading WAVs for scene active scene name. And then we'll say start loading for scene and start loading friggin' hands for scene. Okay. I like the idea of these being static, so let's pass in everything that's needed, I guess. Load tracker, load tracker, load tracker, static, one. Here I want some kind of general purpose function that will return file paths that match certain characteristics. File paths. Find matching file paths. And we'll pass in scene name. .wav. Yeah, like so. And this one. Is it byte or bytes? I think it's bytes. Bytes. I do not know why I chose to use the extension meta. That was a bad decision. Okay, so we'll come back over here. Let's rename this. So it's bytes on the end, because that's how Unity knows how to make sense of it. Huh. How strange. You're only going to let me edit the first part of it. Okay. Well, I suppose I can just go into Finder. Okay, project, audio, speech. Rename this. Use bytes. And this I'll just delete. Unity can make a new one. Okay. So then back to the code. Lips, bytes. Okay. And then this one's going to be hands, bytes. These ones, I think it is speech clip. I think this is going to be a speech clip. I gotta think about this because there's 3 types of files to load. And yeah, this changes the speech clip. Is no longer public. This becomes a ref like it was before. Unity resource folder. So when you say Unity resource folder, that might be a little ambiguous to me, but it's essentially under assets. I'm not using any magic folders. Like I don't use like so I'm familiar. There's like a folder you could create which is specifically named resource. But in this case, I'm not using that. I'm just going to under assets and I'm going to just a directory structure that makes sense to me. And I'm using like the new addressable system, newish. And then I have to do this. I have to say it's addressable. And then the code that gets written is going to load in that way. So that works for sound effects currently. So all these guys are stored under here. They just have addressables, and then the code that is here, load acid async, takes an addressable path. Now there are some files where I prefer to use the file system instead of the Unity load asset async and all that. And those ones are stored in a directory called streaming assets, which I think is kind of like the same thing as the resources folder, or at least has some of the same capabilities. Okay, so if I set this to be a speech clip, then what I can do here is say speech clip. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. The sheer number of ways you can put assets into a Unity project and load them in, I found it a little bit bewildering. I would say maybe I've gotten to maybe a intermediate understanding of it, but I don't feel like an expert. And like when I started out, it seemed like the only way I could do it was to put them inside of asset bundles, and God, that sucked. You had to have an extra build step for it. Then they added the addressable system. I think that was a lot nicer solution. Yeah, I mean, modding, I never did much of it. The stuff I did that counts as modding is like, if you described it today, it wouldn't really make sense that it's a mod. But, yeah. Totally different mindset. I could see that. One is somebody else builds the engine and you're just trying to find some way to get your stuff into it, but you don't really design it. They designed it. And the other is, okay, the design's on you, and presumably you want your game to work over a longer period of time, perhaps. Maybe the engine should support multiple releases. Yeah. So, Razophone, glad to see you. Yeah, I like addressables. Streaming assets, I think I might be painting myself into a corner by using it, because apparently when you go to console it doesn't work, you know. But it's nice to be able to just use the normal file system functions for once to load things in instead of having the Unity thing come in. Resources. I'm trying to remember what the difference was between streaming assets and resources. Unity. Streaming assets versus resources. Yeah, me too. This is what I want to know. Yeah. I felt more at home with streaming assets because I was just like, okay, I can just freaking use file system stuff. Just the standard ancient file system stuff, but then I feel like it'll end up breaking. Okay, so if resources can only load a Unity object. See, this annoys me. Just this sentence, it sounds like a syllogism to me. They're embedded into your program and are therefore platform independent. Why does embedding it into your program make them platform independent? Yeah, I use addressables for most things, and then I've got a few things I'm using streaming assets on because they helped me solve a few problems, and maybe in a way that was a little bit cheap. Short-sighted, I should say. So at some point, some of the things I've got in streaming assets, so I'll probably end up moving to regular assets. I still don't understand why I would want to use resources. I haven't even thought about making a prefab addressable. Let me just look at that for a moment. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't even thought about making that. But okay, so can you make anything addressable? I think you can. And here's why I think that. Because I've got my own custom file formats. They're just binary. And I've marked them as addressable. But in that case, they're sort of wrapped in this idea that they're bytes. So I end up having to put .bytes on the end of the file name. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad Razophone's here too. I'm not at any point in time in the near future going to call myself an expert on this. All right, so speech clip will be my container. I like that a lot. I like that a lot better than what I was doing before. So it's going to load in. Yeah, okay, so I need one of these for each type of file that I'm going to load. And I might maybe refactor a little bit so it's not a lot of repeated code. Yeah. Okay, so we'd say for each file path, string file path, and file paths. Okay, speech clip. Boy, this gets tricky. I need to find for all the file paths this corresponding speech ID. Okay, well, another function for that. So return no 0 for now. Okay. Static string speech ID from file path. I'm in static land though, so that means this needs to pass in Can I make like an alias for this? I think I can. It's like a, I think it's like a using equals, it's like a using speech clip index equals that. I gotta check. How's that done? I think I did it once before. C# alias for generic type. Using something dictionary equals, yeah. Well, that's fine. I just need something like this. Okay, so maybe I have to fully qualify the namespace. Maybe that's it. So let's say this is system collections generic. And this is Godkiller speech clip. All right. Then I don't have to continuously type that again. Well, that's a syntax error. That's weird that it's even allowing that. Well, these days I do much more programming in C# than I do at my day job, but because I'm a manager at my day job. But when I do write code there or do code reviews and other engineers, it's JavaScript, TypeScript, HTML, CSS. Okay, let's say that's to do. Turn new speech clip. Okay. this is going to call this, right? So we'll say just some speech equals and then file path. No, it's a new function. Just, yeah, okay. File path, speech clip, load tracker. Okay, and start loading WAV is okay, and I'm going to change loadable WAV so it just takes a file path. That'll make it a much simpler class. So we'll say file path, load tracker, speech clip. No. Dude, what's the issue? Oh yeah, okay. But it doesn't need to be a ref. Okay, so I'll fix that. And this will be file path. This goes away. This is already known. Okay, so this becomes a much simpler thing. Could almost completely generalize this, but you know, instead of making 3 classes, let me just make one general thing, because all the code is exactly the same except for what gets set here when it returns. Change this to loadable asset, or yeah, loadable asset. Hopefully that is not a namespace conflict. Well, it doesn't matter if it is. Okay, asset type WAV, lips, or hands, one of those. And let's see, delegate. There's probably already some kind of, there's probably already a delegate defined for this thing. Action, async operation handle, audio clip. No, because it's different for each one. Okay, so we just say oh, that's a good thought. Then I wouldn't have to pass in an asset type like this. But I don't know. It's not too hard to pass in an asset type. I definitely know from the point where it's being called beneath. But if I just go by the asset type, not the asset type, but the extension, then that means I could say find matching file paths scene name, take every single file found there, and this is just start loading assets for scene. And I say start loading asset here, and then the only branching that happens would be up in the loadable asset class based on the file extension. So I actually like that idea. So we'll say, yeah, I'll keep this. So it won't be public anymore. We'll say static asset type. Let's see, static file path to asset type string file path. Okay, to do. Okay, so if that's returning what we need there, then I don't need to pass in that. Down here we say, let's see, unknown asset type. Let's make this the default case. So let's see, let's do WAV. That's this one. This should be bytes, I think. What is the name for just loading a binary asset? Let me see if I've used it somewhere else. Text asset. Or, no, this is just the code I just typed. It's text asset. Yeah, that's what worked before. Okay, unload. Loop's done. default. Log. Use the fill blogger. Log info. Nah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. We say return on that. And down here, we say increment the load tracker. Okay, so I'm liking this design a lot better than the first thing. Okay. Oh, okay. I have to convert it to a path. So let's see. Path equals new path, file path, and then okay, what is your complaint? Oh, okay. I gotta learn a little bit how to use it. Okay, path. Get extension. That's probably it. Okay, file path. As opposed to what? You mean what's the purpose of loading it? Or do you mean why not do it a different way? Can I do that? You know, let's just make this even simpler. Let's just get rid of these enums. They're not really needed. So we'll just say string extension. All right, so Razophone. This is kind of a psychological thing that I'm dealing with on these streams. Somebody comes on and they're an intermediate to advanced Unity developer, and there's more than one way to do things. And whatever way I pick, a lot of times it might not be the way they would have done it. It's like the process isn't very familiar to them. The other way they did it worked great for them in the past. I'm unfamiliar with that. It's like we're both driving to the same location, and we both know a different set of roads to get there, but we're unfamiliar with the other person's roads that they would take to get there, perhaps. So if I've already got like a pretty clear plan on how to do something, I'm open-minded to listening to other things, but you'd have to say, like, it's better because of this, as opposed to it's easier, because a lot of times when you say it's easier, it's just easier to you because you've got a certain set of things loaded into your head, I've got a different set of things loaded into my head. I mean, keep in mind, I wrote some code here that worked fine, that followed the same pattern. So I'm still listening to you. I'm just saying I might have a threshold that you'd have to convince me, like, okay, do it this way. And then I'd say, okay, yeah, let's do it that way instead. Okay, so then we go to... So I'll say I've not... I have a distrust of serialization. I'll tell you that much. I've been bitten in the ass by different solutions that relied upon serialization. So that's sort of like a bias, maybe. So if somebody says, why don't you take a Unity object and serialize it? Like I have had bad luck with approaches along those lines. Okay, so this is going to be WAV. And it might be that a certain build of Unity that I had had problems with serializing things. Like the big thing a while back was use scriptable components, and then I started using that, and then said, screw it. It works like ass. I'm doing settings files because I know settings files works. They're not that hard for me. I do have some serialization stuff, but it's like I don't know. So then, but my question would be, okay, we do a serializable asset reference array, and then like what's the case for it? What's the pitch? Like what is it about it that's good? Okay, ellipse animation, and this actually has to be parsed. What is it? Hand animation. So when you say asset reference array, do you mean like it would be a property on a game object? Move this up to the top. Yeah, I got you. That was one of the solutions I considered earlier in the day. I can tell you my thoughts on it. It wasn't specifically an array of asset references, but it was kind of similar. Like we'd have some kind of array and you drag over clips or some kind of... You're actually detailing the solution a little bit more than I had done. So, do I still have it up here? No, I don't. But there was a number 2 option. and it was thinking about the option of having it be a scene referenced asset, which is a more general way of saying what you've said. And then I debated a little bit pros and cons of that. Pros: there's no question that when the scene finishes loading, that the asset that you wanted to have referenceable will be loaded at that time. Cons: if those assets take a little bit longer to load, the scene takes longer to load too. So I might be able to have snappier starts on my levels by just letting the player start playing, maybe 2 to 3 seconds before all the necessary audio loads for speech, which is all the stuff I'm doing is related to speech. So I thought, by managing the loading myself instead of having it inside of a game object, I might be able to cut down the amount of time it takes for you to get to the next level. So the performance angle. The second thing was the workflow for authoring the audio and the lips files and all that. It tends to just kind of want to dump everything into a directory. There's advantages to that. Now, I could still keep that and not be bothered by the performance, not the performance, by the time to populate the index of asset references. But then I'd have to write a little bit of extra code for that as well, to say, go look at all the files that are in the directory and update the game object, and make that part of like the pre-processing run when I save my level. So it seemed like I traded a little bit of complexity there. It's probably a wash, as far as like, is one solution more complex than another. And then I like the option of being able to start a level load just a little bit faster. So that was kind of how I arrived at that decision. But I'll say it was, the two options were pretty close in how I weighed one or the other. Yeah, the constraints on the properties, that makes some sense too. I think with the overall authoring flow and the goal of starting scenes a little bit faster where I can. Okay, so you're saying if I have a mono behavior based game object and it's got an index of these asset reference arrays, they don't load automatically. When I start it up, I would be writing some code to say, go ahead and load them now, right? So my scene starts and I say, go load them, right? So then that would give me the same sort of delayed loading of some assets that would give me a quicker scene start. Yeah. Well, then I guess, I mean, it seems okay, but it starts to feel like it's maybe it's not that much different from my solution in terms of the benefit I get from it. Okay, get rid of this. That's got a chance of working. Okay, and then I don't need start loading WAV anymore. Yeah, I understand. I think it's kind of, it's not crossing the threshold for me to change the decision. Let's see. So let's see. Start loading, we'll say, assets for scene. We'll say find matching file paths, and I no longer need the extension there. And this just becomes, I might as well just put it in line. Okay. So it's going to be file path, load tracker, and speech clip. That's kind of cool. I gotta admit that last one is pretty cool. I don't know, man. It's not enough to make me switch midway through, particularly if I've got clarity on a solution. I don't like to like kind of back up and retrack and redo it. Like I said, it's got to cross a certain threshold for me to want to change what seems to be a pretty reasonable solution. Okay. So then, can't get away with just saying new loadable asset. I'm not doing this I'm not patronizing you. I'm taking a legit note on this in case I want to come back to it. I did do this. See? Yeah, these tips I did actually follow. Your tips I may actually follow later too. That's why I say I'm not patronizing you to write this down this way. Okay, it was use an array of what was the class you said? Addressable asset? That might be valuable. I'd have to scroll up on the chat window. Addressable asset. In a scene game object. Asset reference. Scene game object. Call load type on each element after scene load. Advantages. Constraints on type are possible. Remote loading, loading of remote assets possible. Bam. Okay. So, alternative to speech manager, explicit. Well, it's still explicit loading. Let's see. Path-based discovery of assets to load. There we go. If this thing blows up in my face, I may switch direction and do something like this, or I may sleep on it and it might jump into my head in a way. This has already happened to me at least 3 or 4 times where it matches my workflow, because there's a tool that's going to deposit all the files inside those directories, and that to me is more meaningful, that the files are in those directories, than that somebody went and selected inside of a scene that certain assets should be associated with the scene. And then the other advantage, I already did it this way once. It worked. I already did it this way once. It worked. That's got like the biggest advantage, but it's only an advantage to me because I wrote code earlier with this approach that worked. It's not an advantage to you. I've got some code already that's I can pattern after a little bit, and then maybe even more than that. It's in my brain that it works, you know. But I change my mind on these things all the time. I can get into a paralysis if I don't at some point pick a certain way and just go with it, you know. Okay. Okay. But I do like this refinement you caused me to make already, which is just treat all the assets the same. So start loading assets for scene. We're going to pass in speech clips. Okay. Okay, so next one's the find matching file paths. I think I've got some code for that already. Oh, this one's real easy. This one is just speech clips, clear. Let's do the try get value thing. Try get value, speech ID, out, speech clip. We'll just return it. Otherwise, we create a new speech clip. Existing. Let's see, is there anything I really need to set on the speech clip right when it starts, right when it constructs? Let's see, what's this one? It's speech, okay, speech clip. So the public's, audio clip is loaded. And animation. Okay, no, that's all fine. We say speech clips, speech ID equals speech clip, and we return the speech clip. Okay. Speech ID from file path. That one's a little trickier. Maybe I already wrote code for this. I just want the file name part of the file path. So we'll say string file name equals path. Get file name. Does that include the extension? Yeah, it does. Get file name without extension. That's even better. Lower. What good. Okay, then I think I could split it using the hyphens. Or actually just the file name on itself is the same thing as the speech ID. Okay. So if I look at my existing speech files, it's the scene name. I made an edit. Let's put it back how it was. So it was scene name, bam, character name, first 3 words. Oh, it's not good though. So I've got hyphens in between those letters. That's okay. I don't have a whole bunch of legacy speech IDs to deal with, so let's just pick a new format that's easier to parse. Let's say spaces for this. And then you get the file name part, and that'll do it. Okay. This I can just return the file name portion of it. Okay, so then don't need this function. find matching file paths. That's the next one. It should just be assets. Yes, project audio speech. I think that's right. Let's take a look. Assets, project, audio, speech. I mean, it might be better to not use a file system call to find all the assets of the path, though. If there's the equivalent using resource APIs, that would be better. Oh, I gotta take off. Gotta deal with a family thing. Alright. Rise a phone. DZ, if you're still on there, I'm gonna catch you later. I'm gonna stop the stream here. That's okay. Addressables can't recognize the asset by file path part. Yeah, I can use a file system. I'll see you. Thanks for the help and advice. All right, stopping the stream now.